Hi, I'm Allison Merker Garner, creator of Musical Minds. In this video, we're taking the children who are just starting an instrument. They have played Twinkle and they are now moving through the early part of Suzuki Book 1. And the patterns that we have are now becoming repetitive. We've got the So Me pattern in O Come Little Children. We've got a lot of triadic patterns that are happening. We have a new chord now in piano, the F chord, and Go Tell Aunt Rhody. So it's really building on, reviewing and building on what we already know. So reinforcement in group class is important, that we are still reviewing the tunes and the movement that we have learned, but now we're starting to read them and identify them and be able to sing them on sight. So we're progressing with that. I use these big oversized staffs to look at patterns and to start learning the magic patterns. Like this is so, mi, do, and then we do it the other way. Do, mi, so, mi, la, mi, so, mi, re, do, re, mi, re, do. And there's another pattern that I do not have here, and that is the do, so, do. That's do, and then we go down to the so. So, do, so, do. Often these are pickup notes. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, we get those a lot in folk tunes and also in art music. We get that anacrusis, and it's the low so, and then we land on the downbeat for the do. So in O Come Little Children, we have an anacrusis. It's not one of the do so dos, but it is on an up. And we practice that up many times with movement before we start with the violin. And this can also be a painting piece. Dum bum 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 bum. And if we're singing it as we're doing this, as we're humming it, not on solfege, not on finger numbers, not on note name, just hum it while you move. Dun 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 bum bum bum. Right? So any of those kinds of motions are practicing what we would do here. And that's the hardest part of O Come Little Children. That is the hardest part. And to start up bow on every phrase. So we rehearse that over and over. And the piano literature, we're now getting into the lower so region. When we do Clair de Lune, we're going down. Dun dun bum 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 da 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 dum. It's coming up in violin with that long ago where we go down to that low E and back up. So it's coming, but it's not exactly a so do so pattern, but it's getting there. And so we're starting to rehearse that idea in our group classes and doing a lot of tunes that have upbeats, that have a perfect fourth, and maybe start with a perfect fourth going from the low so to the do. And we will isolate those out and practice them with movement and with singing and hand placement. And some of the songs that are appropriate for that are The Farmer in the Dell, The Farmer in the Dell, The farmer in the dell. Hi-ho, the dairy-o, the farmer in the dell. So that's one that is a movement game that can be used. There's the tune, Mother Brown went to town, riding on a pony. When she got back, she took off her hat and gave it to Miss Macaroni. So we're going down. If we want to get real fancy, we can do the Make New Friends canon. And I don't know all the words to that. It's online. You can look it up. But I usually just hum it because it is a canon, and that's really difficult, particularly if they don't know the tune really well to begin with. But just the idea of dun 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 bum bum, we're going up to the higher do. So we're not jumping down to a low so, we're jumping up to a higher do. That's the same interval, same solfege, but it's in a different octave. And I think that that's important too, because Allegro's coming up. And Allegro has that. So all of these things, we don't have to discuss all of them. We don't have to have everybody on board with all of it, but just to have the exposure means it's not the first time they've ever experienced this. And I think that that's very powerful and helpful for them. So let me look here what I have for Go Talent Rhody, and I've already done. And then I have O Come Little Children, the books. Okay, so the books that I use for these, that I would do in the group class, here we go, are Love Monster, Love Monster. So throughout the book we have Love Monster, and that's that interval. And this one, which is more of a multiple. I'm a pow pow fish with a pow pow face. I spread the dreary wearies all over the place. Forgot it there for a while. But it has that going down to the so and then back up. So, but it has also a mi, re, do, and it has the going up to that so. So that is, once again, you get a lot of practice within the form of the story, and you can add some sound effects, or you can add some dramatic elements to it, like movement, that will make it more fun. But the point being is they're hearing that. Now the other thing coming up that is a challenge, it happens earlier for the pianists, but it does happen for the violinists on May Song, is the dotted rhythm. So we have this dotted rhythm coming up, and I have to say that those pianists really learn it well because they've got the two hands. The violinists can fudge. And so we do a lot of things that involve feeling the beat at the same time as feeling that note coming in between the beats, that displacement. For example, if we're doing walking, the walking would be the beat, we would trip over something and do dun 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 dun, bum 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 bum. Okay, that's one way. And I'm just playing the beats, or I may be playing the beats here, and then I'm playing dum bum bum bum. So they hear that beat underneath. Another thing is the horse and carriage, where there's a horse in the front and a carriage in the back. So the horse takes their hands behind them, and the carriage takes those hands, and the horse keeps the beat, whereas the carriage goes over a rock or a pothole or something and has to do dum, bum, bum, bum. So there's the feeling of both of those going on at the same time. That's another way to internalize it. And anything else with May Song or London Bridge. I think that's it for those. So then we get into long, long ago in the violinists. And as I said with Clair de Lune, it's the first time we've gone down to that low so. So we've already practiced a lot of that in the group class before we start those pieces in the private lesson. And we would, I like to introduce, I think I mentioned this in another video, I introduce the chords in left hand early with the C, the G, and the F. And then we experiment with that, with Twinkle, and using that and improvising just what sounds right with those 3 chords. So we're playing by ear and using harmony. With the violinists, this pattern, do, so, do, is very important for them because it is the first magic pattern they would have learned that can be melodic and can be just as easily used harmonically. So when they are introduced to the idea of harmony, they're taking an A to the E to an A, for example, or a D to the low A to the D, so that they're not trying to play the whole chord, but they're playing the harmonic notes that are changing. And I may do a tune, like a fiddle tune, Rakes of Mallow or something like that, and they've got to change when it sounds right. They have to use that magic pattern when it sounds right. In your level 1 materials, I have written out all the magic patterns I use. These are the ones I use. They might not be all the ones you use. You may choose different patterns depending on what you teach and how you teach it and what you find most useful. But it gives you an idea of what patterns work. And this is one of them. And so this is also an excellent time to start talking about the circle of fifths. And pianists can just go ad nauseum with the fifths crawling up the piano. We've done the octaves at the very, very beginning. Now we start doing fifths. String players certainly have their open strings. And then we learned in Song of the Wind is the first time we had a fifth that was not an open string with a third finger. Dum, bum, 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 bum. So that part there, I would lift out, oh, here's another fifth. We could do, who's that? Who's that knocking at my window? And just do the same thing we did with open strings with that third finger. And then by long, long ago, we can start doing it with ones, with twos, with threes, and even exploring a little bit, you know, if we're playing Twinkle now on the lower strings, which I do at long, long ago to get used to those lower strings, we can even try it with those too. But just start getting accustomed to fifths and the idea of fifths and how they feel and how we create them and how they look on the keyboard. I have my violinists see it on the keyboard. So all of that, this is a good time to start introducing the idea of that. We don't memorize all the keys and the order of the sharps, or we're not doing any of that yet, but just the general concept of moving in fifths. That is what we do. In level 2, I start using tetrachords, and so this is really a good start with that too, because we're learning tonic dominant that way. We're learning the first scale degree and the fifth scale degree. We're learning the first half of a scale and the second half of a scale. I mean, that pattern is really kind of an integral part of getting basic theory started. And then when we get into pieces in violin, like Allegro, it's a lot of the same thing. We've already done subdivision. We've already done staccato and legato. We've already prepared that upper do and doing a scale in that. So there's not much that's new. It's really just the fast bow stroke. And for pianists, it's in the late book one, so it's, you know, in a different key. But still, I use Allegro a lot in the group class to move to. If we do beat, subdivision of the beat, and doubling of the beat, I'll use that tune a lot and just change to dum bum 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 bum, and so they can start to move in those different ways rhythmically. So then the last thing I want to get to is for the violinist, the beginning of using fourth finger, which is perpetual motion. And so we already have practiced a perfect fourth because we've practiced the so, do, so. So we don't have to always do that with a certain fingering. We don't have to do open, 1, open. We can do 3, open 3. We can do 4, 1, 4. We can do other ways. And so we're already exploring fifths and what they can do. We're starting to explore some fourths. And that is reinforcing what we learned in Maysong, because we do have that fourth at the top there. And it is preparing for the idea, of an arpeggio coming up. And when I practice the fourth finger, I start with 1 down and 4 and doing it that way, right? Love monster, or when she got back, she took off her hat, you know, anything like that. So getting the feel of that with 1, 4, then you can try 2, 4, and then open 3, you know, just different finger combinations. But getting started with that is really, really good. And then we've already done single notes and double notes in our feet, in our hands, in our voices, like in Paige's Train. So now we're doing it in our bow. So that's not going to be a big change. That's not going to be a big deal. And anything else? I really get into notation by now. So I'm pulling out these cards and the popsicle sticks and making notes out of them, and then actually writing those notes, and even a tiny bit of dictation if it's something they know really well and is simple, like handy spandy, or engine number 9, which repeats itself over and over and over and over. Then we find that rhythm and we write it out so we could read it back. All of that kind of thing is well underway by the halfway point of book 1. And we're not calling, I may have them know the open string notes. The pianists, I may have them know C's and G's in the right hand, in the treble clef. But I'm not really worrying about that yet. I'm worrying more about their pitch patterns and their rhythmic patterns, getting those memorized, getting them so that they can play them by ear, that they're starting to transpose them, they're starting to read them, they're starting to improvise with them. That's really where I'm at this point in the game, because I want them creative. I don't want them locked down yet to notes and note names and and getting into that. I'm exercising all the mental and some of the physical, like the eye movement skills that would be necessary to do that. I'm just not putting an instrument under the chin yet. So it's still no reading books. I have written reading books for my violin and piano students. I also have viola and cello, and I introduce them at different times depending on when the child is ready. I really want to see that they are thinking creatively, that they can imitate well, that they are playing in tune, they're playing correct rhythms, they're thinking well, they're preparing for notes. All of that is in place before we add the notation to the mix. But when we do that, we've already done it in class so many times with singing and writing and moving that it's an easy transition at that point. So that brings us to the middle of book one, which is really as far as level one goes. I do have written out in some of your materials some things for the later pieces, but that's very general. I think this is about as far as we need to go from pre-instrumental to middle of book one. Huge amount of learning in that period. So thank you.